Well, this is something I kind of alluded to it earlier and before we even went live. I've been augments have been on my brain, and I want to bring this topic because we're getting very scarily close to May, and we will have the tank augments and cleric augments or the secondary coming up, and the community has been when I look on the forums when I was kind of researching like sentiments on augments, and it's still very either neutrally afraid or afraid of the augment system, meaning that it's not going to be up to their standard. And, I think because of how one dimensional, like if you think about it, you can't really play your class any different than the whatever anyone's base class is, right? Like you're going to go into almost all your abilities and you're going to be pushing them in a sequence that everyone else is. If they're playing fighter, everyone's playing fighter basically the same. So these augments really need to do some heavy lifting, and they really need to be quite transformative, especially if given the fact that Steven has said that it's going to be like 2 weeks potentially to change your secondary class, right? So they should be quite transformative. So my question to you guys is, like, how important is the augment system to you and your gameplay, and how involved do you want augments to change your base abilities?
Oh,
JB, why don't you do this one first?
wow. Okay.
You've been playing fighter, right, JB?
Yeah, reluctantly. Burns
Why reluctantly?
JB wants to be a summoner, is what it is.
Yeah. I'm waiting for some. So the reason I say that is because I started this phase wanting to play something I knew I would not main. So I started with cleric, and then I got tired of healing people, and so I I wanted to be more selfish, I guess, and so I went to fighter for a while. So I'm just like eliminating the things I know I'm not going to play at launch, and so just having some fun. But it's a fun class. Yeah, sorry, Burns. It's a fun class. I mean,
it's got problems. We know.
It's all right. It's okay. It happens, right? When I think of the augment system, I think for me, it's more about knowing what fantasy archetype I want to be, and hope that there's just some like, sorry about that, my water bottle. So there's some things that just kind of like follow with that. So like, I really want to play a necromancer. That's what I really want to be. And I know that's a summoner. Oh yeah. That's a summoner, and I want to say cleric. Cleric, yeah. I know when you hear a necromancer, there's just some things that come to mind. One, raising the dead, right? Or something about minions, and I definitely want those augments to impact the gameplay. And I want to do it in such a way that, I mean, I don't know that you can ever avoid meta in any MMO. Like, it's always present, right? It's always that thing. There's always now going to be tier lists and YouTube videos coming out. Burns will put one out like 3 hours after a gathering update, which, well done, by the way.
Thank you. My fastest turnaround time yet.
Yep. Do you have to change your shirt? Were you covered in sweat and like get all cleaned up?
No, I knew I was going to be on LoreForged tonight, so I already had this shirt on. It's a moss-colored polo for the boys.
Ooh.
Can you not just picture like that scene of like the car just driving down the highway and then just pulling off and just off a cliff? It's like a the update thing. I gotta get home to try to
I was actually mid-procedure. I had needles in this patient, and my phone vibrated because my friend Kumsi messaged me. I dropped. I took my scrubs off, and I
Had a boy.
Sew him up.
Yeah,
wrap it up.
There's now needles sewn inside the thorax.
Yeah, that's what PAs are for. So like I said, I'm just a medical assistant, so I could leave. It was no big deal.
Oh, I love it.
Close
my god,
I gotta go.
They're gonna wake up. What is this? But I think for me, because like whenever you have a certain fantasy archetype, things are kind of expected to follow to a certain extent. Like, I don't know, this would be a long shot, but in my head, I know I want to have minions as a necromancer. I would love for the ability to take a fallen enemy, someone that I've killed, or a friend, and reanimate their corpse for X amount of seconds. Like, it's just like things like that, like to really kind of dive deep into that archetype and what that looks like in fantasy. That to me, I think, is really where my head's at. So yeah, to answer your question, I think I really, really want it to affect gameplay. I really want to throw a wrench in meta and tier lists and just mess it up.
Let me pose a question to you then.
Yeah.
Would you rather have more transformative augments, but are limited to only 5 abilities being augmented, but those 5 augments are very transformative and very powerful? Or would you rather have less generic, more kind of like what Steven describes, but every ability can potentially be augmented, but just in a very generic way? What would you rather have?
I would rather have 5 in-depth just choices, like things that really lean into that augment. I don't really like, I gravitate less. I don't hate it, be very clear. I don't hate it, but I definitely gravitate less towards just generic, like overarching changes. I would love to see like those really focused decisions, those really focused, because I just love choice. I go back to, I feel like we probably all could say we've played Knights of the Old Republic way back in like early 2000s, right? Like where in the narrative, just like you had to make a choice and it affected the rest of your gameplay, right? The whole thing, like you killed that person. Well, guess what? That's it. It's just like things like that I miss.
Well, it's the way I think about it. It's like, let's say if you have like 13 abilities that you chose for your fighter at endgame, but you can only have 5 and they're all very transformative. If you look at the other like 7 abilities that don't have those augments because you're limited to 5, you're like, man, but I love all of these augments for these others. It's like, that's going to provide, in my opinion, what you will be different than another fighter of that same class, right? Like, let's say if you were fighter mage and someone else was fighter mage, you picked 5 different abilities that someone else didn't, because again, maybe you're prioritizing PvE and they're prioritizing PvX. They want to be kind of a blend of both. And that's the thing that I really am looking for Ashes of Creation.